Hello all, welcome to Tech with SAS. With this video, I'm going to start a series on REST web services. So if you are interested to learn about REST web services from scratch in a very simple language, then please subscribe this channel and keep following my videos. So maybe in my next 10 to 12 videos, I would cover various aspects and nuances of REST web services. So agenda for the next few videos will be like this. So this is the first video where I will talk about like understanding on the REST web services, various components of it. Then we will try to understand like how REST and HTTP work together because they are like working together in this kind of a architectural style, right? Then we'll focus on the URIs because in REST web services, everything is working on URIs and resources. So it's an important concept to understand to get good hands on it. Then, as we know that there are many methods in REST like get, post, put, delete. So, and few more like batch. So we'll go in each verb or method and understand various aspects of it and how it applies to our REST APIs. Then the concept of idempotency, like how it works and how it is applicable for which verb or which methods, right? So we understand this thing in deep. And this is very popular interview questions which comes frequently also. And then we also talk about response type like response codes and response types. So then there's a concept called HATOs. So basically it's like a hypermedia engine of application state. So we also see like what is that and how it is applicable for our REST web services. Then whenever we develop the REST services, right? So we assign a degree like what at what degree our services are RESTful. So there's a model called the this model, right, Richardson maturity model, which defines that how can we categorize that which REST service is like fully RESTful or not RESTful at all. So this model is very important to understand about it. Then there's headers, which are like very important in when we talk about REST APIs, because they have some meanings and client and server talk to each other with those headers, right? Then also when you expose any API, you want to limit like how many requests you want to serve maybe for per second. So how can we implement that and the concepts around that? Then also I will do a hands-on coding on creating a sample RESTful API using Spring Boot. So maybe this is like integrated list. I will add more topics to it as we go along. And if there are comments from you and you want particular topic to be covered, I will cover that as well. Okay. So let's start with our first video. So we always hear about the APIs, right? API, we talk about it means that application programming interface. So what is that? So everybody use like the Facebook, right? So whenever you go to you log into Facebook, you see a very beautiful page in front of you, right? So whatever data is coming from Facebook database or servers, they render it using some fancy CSS, HTML. So, for human readable format, we can see it very beautifully, right? But actually, the backbone of whole website is data, and that data is coming from APIs, and it is not that fancy, which we see on the website. So what happens that whatever images or whatever the content we see on the website like Facebook.com, that is having data And upon data, we have that whole CSS HTML interface, so it look beautiful, right? But actual APIs, right? Actual APIs which are working behind very hard to get that data, they are like not that beautiful, right? So, and also you may be understanding like one thing, right? Suppose you have a Facebook account and you also have some application which want to interact with Facebook. How can you do that? So, Facebook basically or any other like com and all the normally all the public sites, they expose some APIs. So those APIs means suppose you want to interact with the facebook.com from your application, right? So you can consume those APIs. So those APIs will be for some particular purpose. For example, this link, right, is when you go to this link, you can see a lot of APIs exposed by Facebook. So, for example, if you want to see the various posts from a group, right, in Facebook, and you want to see it basically from your own application. So, Facebook has provided some open APIs. So, like this. So, you have to request with this URL, right? This is a URL where they have exposed a resource, and you can get request, you can get a response. So once you have a response, maybe in JSON or XML, then your application can consume it. So now, once you get this response back from the facebook.com, you can maybe modify or beautify this, maybe using some HTML or CSS, right? So how APIs come into picture? So you are able to interact with other applications with their open APIs, whatever APIs they have exposed. So for all the APIs, they will predefine some input and one resource URL. And once you hit it with proper parameters, you get response. So once you get response, it's not that beautiful, right? It's only like this, like some text messages over some arrays and some strings, some integers, right? But once you get it, you can render it and make a very beautiful application, right? So API is like, I think API is clear now. So whenever you have some application, even you can also expose your own application. So suppose there is some good feature you have created and you want others to use it, maybe for free or maybe for some money. You can open your expose your APIs to others and they can hit your API and get response back, right? Now understand what are the web services, right? So normally what happens, suppose you have one application on a server, right? So all the functionalities, everything, whatever functionalities you want to expose to client, they will be in one code base or client will interact it directly and get response. But once when you use the web services, they are like some kind of mechanism over web where functionalities may be in different servers, and then suppose here, right, you can see that there are three web services, and they are not part of one code base or one server, but together they are able to fulfill the purpose of client. So suppose client wants some information, it is calling the web service one. So now web service one needs some more information, so it is calling the other services, right? So basically, if you can understand web service like in a way that it's basically a kind of programs which are exposed over web, okay? And generally they are like having the functionalities and running on separate servers, and they call each other using some methods which are predefined, right? So this is how we can define the web services. Now, if we talk about the various popular types of web services, so they are like REST and the SOAP. So in my early career, right, I normally use the SOAP web services, and later now the services are more popular. So these are the two popular web services types, REST and SOAP. But nowadays, REST is more prominent because it is very simple and like more developer friendly. So nowadays we use REST more. as compared to SOAP, because SOAP is like more complex and hard to maintain and also hard to learn. It is like require a lot of very steep learning curve as well. So if you want to now understand what are the various characteristics of the web services, so when we talk about the like web service, right? So we have one client and one web service. So now for some functionality or some method, client want to call to web service. So how can it call? So it need some kind of way, right? So normally in web service calls we use the HTTP, right? So HTTP request we send to the web service from client. Then web service will render the request and uh, do the required processing and send back the response in the HTTP format. So there's the first characteristic which comes into our mind when we talk about web service is the HTTP exchange. So whatever the exchange happening between client and web services, that is going to be using the HTTP, right? So that is the very strong way to talk to the client and web services together. Now, a second characteristic is the protocol. So when a client and web service want to talk to each other, they will exchange some data, right? So data format is required because both should understand the format of data which they want to talk to each other. So the popular formats nowadays, like they are like XML, JSON, and text, and maybe some others as well. Okay, it's not limited to it. It depends upon the contract between the client and web services, web service, and they can use any. Like for example, XML is like more popular with SOAP, and JSON is like more popular with the REST web services. So the protocol here, which is like data exchange is happening between two components, is via these ways, right? XML, JSON, or text. Now let us understand what is the service definition. So when you define a web service, right? So suppose, for example, if you define a SOAP web service, so how a client will know, okay, what is your input, what is the output, what are the methods, right? So in the SOAP world, what used to happen or what is happening now also, we create a WSDL, WSDL WSDL, say as a contract, right? In the WSDL, everything will be mentioned, like what are the methods and what are the various input output, right? Everything will be mentioned. But uh, in in REST, right, there is no concept of this service definition. There is no hard and fast way to define the contract between the web service and the client. And web service, I mean, but it's not like that. There is no documentation at all. There are some documentations which is not like a predefined format, but ultimately maybe on a website or maybe in some Word document, you can document for your client, okay, this is my URL, these are the input, is the output. So very loosely we define the service definition, right? And when you develop any web services in the REST, you are not required to anything like importing something like in SOAP, right? We have to keep an eye on WSDL, right? That is going to be a Bible between the client and web service. But in the REST web services, there's no such kind of a definition for services defined concretely. But yeah, one thing is that there is a concept of Weddle. So Weddle, I have seen like, but it's not much popular nowadays. I mean, I have not seen it used by anybody as such. But yes, Rust has Weddle, and where we can define the service and its definition. But it's not popular. Normally, documentation like we use Swagger documentation or like maybe some other documentation depending on project. So yeah, so there is no hard and fast way to define this web service like we have in SOAP. Now, now we have to understand what is REST, right? So when you talk about REST, right, REST is basically and architectural style is not some kind of a very like stringent kind of a rules or regulations as such, but it's like a very loosely way to define the architectural styles. So, and the full form is basically the representational state transfer. So you can understand this fancy term by simply having a resource. So suppose you have a resource called users, right? So on the users, what will you do? You will either get resources from database, or maybe you will update resources, delete, or maybe something else also you can do. Maybe like you can update partially or what. Okay. So when we have this REST concept, right, it means like resources. So for example, here you can see like we have one URI, and that is having the users as a resources. So when you use the get verb, it means that you want all users to get, right? You want to get all users basically, right? So it's like a one state of object. But when you do some kind of manipulation or some changes, so that state will change. But don't be confused about REST. Just understand that when you talk about REST, you talk about the resources. Like what are the operations you are doing, like CRUD operations, right? Create, read, update, delete. You are doing on resources. For example, we have taken here, we have a user as a resource. So when we are using having a get method on this URI, it means that get me all users, right? Second is like post. So URI is same, right? But the it says post. It means that you can create a new user object. Okay, user object you can create. Now, if you want to get a particular user, right? So you can give its ID, maybe user ID, user slash one. So it gets resourced by ID. So just understand these terms. API means the application programming interface. It means that there is some functionality exposed by somebody, maybe by you, and which can be used by anybody, right? If you have opened it to all, and there will be some kind of a URL defined for that and input output, some kind of a basically interface. Then web service is basically kind of a standalone component running in one server and exposing some functionalities that can be consumed by the any external users. And REST is basically representing the resources from an application, and that we can manipulate with our these verbs like get, post, put, delete, patch, right? So with this, I think we have a good base on the REST web services. So let's meet in my next video. Till then, thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Please leave comments or questions and please subscribe. And also, if you have want to have some other topics covered in this series, so please let me know in comments. I will try to add that. Thank you very much.